Okay, Aariv, so let's go back to the beginning. The emergence of the United States as a country. What was its posture towards the rest of the world at that point, and how do we know that? What's the story there?
Of course, America began with the Declaration of Independence in 1776, and that was entirely based on the fact that the government should be protecting the individual rights of the citizens of America to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And their foreign policy also reflected that. They didn't want to be involved with anything that would alienate those rights of their citizens. And if another country or another nation did something that would alienate those rights, then that was the only time when they would go to war and risk the lives of their soldiers and their citizens, because they had to protect their country and, more importantly, the rights of their citizens. So it was all based on the rights of American citizens.
Okay, so let's walk through a few of the scenarios. For instance, George Washington's very initial challenge coming in 1789 as the first president, what was the challenge there and how did he respond?
So it was the French Revolution. During the Revolutionary Wars in America, France had actually helped America because they kind of wanted to hurt Britain. And now America kind of had a dilemma on its hands. Do we help Britain, who is our mother country, and kind of reconciliate a bit and help them invade France? Or do we help France, who did help us during our own revolutionary wars, and who also we feel sympathetic to because they're also fighting for liberty from a monarchy and trying to establish a republic? But George Washington said that they needed to stay neutral in 1789 with his proclamation of neutrality.
Yeah, I think that was 1793, but it's okay. Yeah, but you got the essence of it, right? And so, yeah, because the wars of the French Revolution did not actually ignite immediately. They started in 1792. So I'm pretty sure that the proclamation was 1793. But anyway, you got the essence of it, and that's the key is the European wars, we don't get involved in those. Okay, but we don't also want the Europeans in our backyard. So how does that play out, for instance, in Thomas Jefferson's presidency of not having any political entanglements with Europe?
So right next to the colonies, there was Napoleon had a massive chunk of land, and Thomas Jefferson knew that if they were going to have an emperor right next to them as their neighbor, that at some point a conflict would spark and that there would be war. And so to avoid that, he bought all that land from Napoleon and just said that we don't want this to end in conflict, so why don't you just stay in Europe and we'll just stay here and we won't
Okay,
interact
right.
each
So we
other.
got the Louisiana Purchase, and then Americans' rights were threatened by Britain. And what was the response by James Madison?
I think this is the War of 1812, where Britain was trying to fight against Napoleon, who basically had conquered all of Europe, and they said we really need a navy and we really need more soldiers. So any Americans who were, let's say, sailing around Europe or even just in the Atlantic, they would sometimes capture them, saying that since they had been born in Britain, they were they were still technically British citizens, and that they could be hauled off to fight against Napoleon. And of course, that was unacceptable. So James Madison started the War of 1812 to stop Britain from keeping on breaking the rights of its citizens.
All right, so we've been discussing some of the intervening facts, which are part of the narrative that we understand. The viewers here today are going to have the benefit of our Anchor Fact timeline of foreign policy, which is a periodized history, which is more advanced than typically students have to handle in the program because, and this is a topic which is way beyond the scope of what we could possibly cover here, even though Aariv is very well versed in this. In order to take the facts of history, which are many and which are simply fragments of information, and render them into something that is useful and relevant in the present, we must engage in something called periodization. And that just means, in simple terms, it means grouping them together into progressions or periods, which are logically flowing, unfolding sequences. And so this being able to understand that logic, performing what we call periodization in a formal manner, is actually part of the advanced history program. So Aariv has done all that kind of work already. And so what you see on the screen is our periodization scheme. Our periodization scheme says basically there was a period of political separation after which America started to become interconnected. There was a process of interconnection that it underwent, and then it emerged as the world police power. So this is the logic of the story of American foreign policy. So now, Aariv, we've talked about the early segment of this period of political separation, but now we need to talk about the defining moment of it. After the War of 1812, okay, that's James Madison as president. Now we move on to the next guy. What was the issue, and what did he say, and why does it matter so much?
So basically, he solidified what all the presidents before him had been practicing, which was political separation. And this was President James Monroe with the Monroe Doctrine in 1823. And the specific reason why he had prescribed this warning to Europe to not go not just to America but to anywhere in the Americas, and this is specifically because Latin America had just recently become or the Iberosphere had just recently become independent, and they had also heard that many European empires were plotting to reclaim it, which would mean having another European empire right next door again. So they basically established a giant keep out sign, and the Europeans decided to listen.